So I am Dr.Pijush Kumar Dutta. So I have done my PhD in timberline ecosystems, Arunachal Pradesh, from Assam University, Silchar. High altitude ecosystems are very sensitive to any kind of changes. Most of the plants and animals which are found over there, they're very rare and very sensitive, highly vulnerable to any small disruptions. My work is in Eastern Himalaya, which is also very important biodiversity areas. My childhood I spent really in the wilderness in Arunachal Pradesh. My father was in the government service in Arunachal Pradesh, so I was very much close to nature. I spent my most of my childhood very close to nature. So that's how probably, and also because as I'm from Northeast India, this is an area where there is still lots of scope to work on ecology. It's not like a Western Ghat and others where so much of work has already been done. But Northeast is an area, it's a gold mine to work for conservations, to work on ecological topic. So that's actually drives me. I'm fortunate that I was able to get a job which was of my interest, and also because most of the time it happens that you might have an interest and you get your degree, but later when you are in job you go for something else. But I'm fortunate that both actually I was able to continue whatever was my wish. My work has been mostly with the community-based conservation. So I've been working with communities to mobilize them for conservation of biodiversity, particularly in Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, and now in Assam. And also I'm working with our WWF India team across India because I'm the national lead for our community work in WWF India. So in WWF India, I joined in the year 2001 in Arunachal Pradesh, and I worked there for till 2013. Then I moved out and joined Tata Institute of Social Science Guwahati campus. So I was teaching there for almost 3.5 years, and then again back to WWF. So there's a 3.5 years, quite a good break for me because being in social science institute, I learned a lot about the community related issues and the dynamics. Most of the works, as I have said, is with the community. So how to work with them, or mobilize them for conservation of rich biodiversity that we have. It's basically trying to have a balance between the conservations and community well-being. So you cannot have a conservations without by compromising community well-being. Today also I'll just talk about a little bit more about my learnings from the field. I'll say I'm not an expert. This is a field where no one can claim to be an expert. So whatever I have learned and what I have seen in the field for almost like now 2 decades, and mostly in the Northeast. So I'll just like to share some of those learnings everybody. So my talk will be mostly on what is the need for an inclusive conservation, or I would say the community-based conservation. And I'll also share a little bit of the way we actually try to promote it in Arunachal Pradesh. Yeah. So basically, if you see the whole across the globe, the way conservations are happening, but the most popular means of conservation is the protected area model of conservation. So people notify national park, wildlife sanctuaries. So those kind of an model which are very popular and most commonly used model of conservation. So, and it's all started, I think, after the first national park in USA, the Yellowstone National Park was notified in 1872, and India also adopted the same approach to have those areas notified as a protected area. Now, though this model of conservation has lots of kind of benefits, like if you talk about India, the whole recovery of tiger population has been possible because of this model of conservation. In Northeast, in Assam, the rhino population revival was possible because of this model of conservation. But it is also true now, globally recognized, that there are certain limitations to this model. When you talk about the sustaining conservation effort on a long-term basis, so there are certain limitations. One is obviously, if you look globally, 11% of the world forests, which are very biodiversity rich area, are inhabited by local indigenous people or communities. Also, 85% of the protected area globally, people are settled inside. So it's protected area, though by definition is something where people are not supposed to be inside. Yeah, but in reality, it is not like that. Even in India, you will see lots of protected area where still people are there, and there are lots of efforts going on to rehabilitate themselves, and there are problems that comes up when that kind of an efforts are made. Now, when there are people residing in biodiversity-rich areas, so you cannot exclude people for any conservation approach that you adopt. Also, now the major kind of a constraint, if you look at with this protected area model of conservation, is that the cost of conservation success is and benefit is not equitably distributed. If you look at when the number of tiger increases, it's something for global community to celebrate. It's a gain for the global community. But who is paying the cost? It's the community who are settled in adjoining areas where tigers are found. Because these tigers will come out and kill their cattle. Sometimes the people are getting killed by tiger. Elephants are coming and raiding their crops, damaging their houses. So a model of conservation where cost and benefit are not equitably shared. Someone is enjoying the benefit and someone is paying the cost. There is a problem. It cannot sustain on a long-term basis. Yeah, so you need to have a model where these are equitably shared. Second, also, like most of the protected area, if you look, are located as an islands of biodiversity, scattered islands of biodiversity. So here one protected area, they are somewhere 100 kilometers far of there, one more protected area, then again 50 kilometers far of there, one more protected area. Now, if you look at the whole ecology, the way it functions, it cannot function in isolation, in scattered manners. In ecology, the ecosystems are connected and they are very much linked with each other. So if you are trying to secure islands of biodiversity, there is a serious doubt that how long this can really help in conserving the biodiversity that we really want to preserve. So that means protected area, that is one limitation it has. Second, the way it is designed and executed, the community normally feels alienated because it's a very top-down approach. The forest department who take a call, who take the decisions, who manage it, and it's a model where, in general, communities are always considered as a threat. So they are always kept aside. But the community who has been staying there for generations, when they are being kept out of whatever is happening there, obviously they feel alienated. And there are lots of grievances which keeps rising in them. Sometimes we say that community is against conservation. It's not that they are against conservation. Basically, you'll find they are against the protected area model of conservation. So all these things is something now it is globally recognized. Though there are positive outcome of protected area model of conservation, but at the same time there are limitations also. So we need a conservation model where the interest of the community, well-being of the community, at the same time, conservation of wildlife is taken care of simultaneously. You cannot just talk about conservations without talking about the well-being of community. And that's how the CBD, the Convention on Biodiversity, which is an international convention, and India is also signatory to it. In 2018, they have proposed about the inclusive conservation, which is basically a balanced approach where community interest will be not compromised with. And so there are lots of interesting efforts and it's going on. It's basically communities, if you look globally, they have been engaged in conservation work. They have been conserving their resources for time immemorial, but it has never been recognized and supported. So now there is an effort that to recognize them and provide whatever the support is required. This become an additional area under which is taking care of biodiversity other than the notified protected area. So there is a whole term now also has been coined like OECM, which is basically other effective area-based conservation approach mechanisms. So this is something now where all those sacred groups, like any area that community is protecting, these are also now being started being listed and documented as a conservation practices that is happening in a country. If you look at India in particular, so we have around 870 notified national park, wildlife sanctuary, community reserve, conservation reserve, as per the wildlife protection, which is actually taking care of around 5% of the total geographic of the country. But if you look at the FSI report, we have around 21.5% area under forest cover. So if 5% is under notified protected area, it itself is showing, obviously, it's not necessary that only in the forest you have the biodiversity. In the alpine area, in the grassland where you don't have forest, it also is equally important for biodiversity conservation. But just from the forest, if you look at, it itself is showing that there is a huge area outside protected area. Yeah, if we have nearly 22% forest cover in the country, and only 5% is getting protected as a notified protected area, that itself is indicating that there are lots of area outside which also require some attention. And there it is difficult to now notify new protected area because community is not very kind of supportive of it. So to secure those areas, you need to take along community. And you need a model where community will be with you, will be actively working for conservation. Now, when you talk about Northeast India, I'll now straight away come to Northeast India, where I'm born and brought up, and it's my the place where I'm working also. Now, India is very fortunate to have three biodiversity hotspots, which is very important globally. One is obviously the Western Ghats, second is the Himalaya, and third is the Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot. Now, if you look at the northeastern states, 8 northeastern states that we have, Sikkim and Arunachal is part of the Himalaya biodiversity hotspot, and rest of the 6 states that we have in Northeast are part of Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot. So whole of the Northeast is actually part of 2 biodiversity hotspots. So it itself signifies how important this area is for conservation. We don't have to give a statistics like how many birds, how many wildlife, or what kind of a thing. So it is globally recognized. If you have the whole area covered under 2 globally recognized biodiversity hotspots, it's a one line you can summarize that what is the importance of this region for conservation of biodiversity, what kind of a biodiversity value it carries, it is supporting. And also, one of the very interesting things that you come across, which you don't see normally in most of the, what we say, quote unquote, the mainland India, a huge amount of forest is under the custody of local traditional community, indigenous community, which we call as unclassed state forest. So if you look at Arunachal Pradesh, 62% of the Arunachal has 80% under forest cover, but 62% of the total forest is under the traditional ownership of local community, where forest department doesn't have much say actually. Similarly, Manipur, it is around 68%. Nagaland, it's 90% of the forest are with community. In Meghalaya, also 90%, more than 90%. So it's a huge kind of a rich biodiversity that is still under the ownership, traditional ownership of local community. Their role is very critical, very critical when you try to conserve these resources, important biodiversity resources that you have in this region. If you look at this, the unclassed state forest area, which is around 58% of the total forest, this actually contribute to the 14% of the forest of India. That means 14% of the total forest of India in Northeast, which is in Northeast, are under the control of local communities. But it is also true that in Northeast, the forest cover is going down very rapidly. So if you look at globally, the way the conservation discourse is going on, in the CBD that again, where India is a signatory, in 2010, all the global leaders came together and they have committed that by 2020, they will secure 17% of the global terrestrial and inland water bodies and 10% of the coastal and marine areas, which is very popularly known as the achieve biodiversity target. But now, when in 2020 the assessment was made, it was found that we have not been able to achieve it globally. Now there is a whole talk going on post 2020 target. So the popular thing is discussion that is going on is a 30 by 30. Next 2030, we need to make sure that 30% of the area of Earth is secured. Now, when you want to secure that amount of area, it is very much important that you recognize and support community-based conservation, because protected area model alone will never be able to meet that target. No government, no country can achieve that target if they only depend on protected area model of conservation. So to meet those global target, also in India, there is a need to promote community-based conservation, and in that, Northeast can really contribute. There is a huge opportunity for Northeastern states to contribute there. And also, like when you have this kind of an community-based conservation model, it is not only taking care of the biodiversity, but through sustainable use of resources from that managed area, even the economic condition of the community can be also improved. So I'll share some of the experiences that we already had from Arunachal Pradesh. Now, if you look at Northeast, it is interesting that during the British regime, they actually followed a policy of non-interference because of unique governance systems, culture we had in the Northeast. They almost have a policy of non-interference. And even after independence, when the in the constitutions of India, certain specific provisions were kept to ensure that the unique governance systems or unique relationships or cultural practices which is there in Northeast are preserved and are not disturbed. Also, if you look at, so one of it is obviously the sixth schedule provisions, the autonomous council areas that we have in Northeast. Yeah. So that's one provision that we have for the Northeastern states where there is autonomy that are being given to decide upon lots of things lots of administrative things that is there in those districts. There are, I would say, gaps which is there whether the objective of having an autonomous council has actually been achieved or not. I'll say not to an extent it was expected. Not to an extent it was expected, even for the conservation. That's why we are also focusing now. That once the autonomous council was declared, they immediately started using the Wildlife Protection Act, basically all the central legislations whether there is a provisions that they can have their own rules where they can actually take care of the community interest for conservation. So they don't need to have a follow a protected area model of conservation, but unfortunately they have started copy pasting all what is normally others are practicing. So they have not maintained that uniqueness so far. So that's limitations are there. But also when we are talking about community-based conservations, we have to be very realistic. Like communities are also changing very rapidly. Yeah, so their aspirations are changing, their priority is changing. Yeah, so they are moving from subsistence economy, traditional subsistence economy to market-based economy. So it's not about their survival; it's about now earning hard cash. So there is also very high influence of external drivers like the politics and the markets, which are influencing even the very remote villages nowadays. Lots of major infrastructure projects that are coming, which is leading to the fragmentations of many of these biodiversity rich areas. Also, what we have noticed is that though they may have a good traditional knowledge, but the traditional management systems are eroding. Not eroding actually, but they are becoming ineffective. Traditional management systems, all the rules and regulations which they normally used to follow, these are not changing with time. So for example, all these rules and regulations were framed maybe 50, 60 years back when the whole threats and challenges, conservation threats and challenges were very different. But now, say, for example, the new challenges of climate change, garbage, infrastructure, and illegal trades of wildlife and plants, which has come up. So, as these systems are not changing to address these new threats and challenges, so gradually they are becoming without any kind of an effect. So, there are no more effect, unfortunately. Most of the time, what happens, like when most of the conservation organizations go and start working with the community, we try to impose our conservation objective on them. So, say for example, for us, what is important is that to make sure that the critically endangered species is protected, or rare species is protected. But community has a very different objective of conservation. They normally go by what is the utility value. If this is culturally important for them, or any other is very important for them, they will definitely take care of it. What is important while approaching communities that to find out a trade-off, like how to have a convergence between our conservation objective and their conservation objective. If we try to impose our objective on them, it will not be a good kind of a point to start with. So these are some of the challenges that obviously one should be very careful about when planning to start working with community for conservation. I was very sure about that communities are not very much against conservation. Otherwise, we would have a 80% area under forest. So, but the problem is with the protected area model of conservation where community lose their ownership right, user rights, and all those things. So it was quite clear to me that if you can have a model where conservation can be done without the community losing their rights, community will definitely come forward to support it. At the same time, conservation cannot be a very charity-based job. Community also should see some economic benefit out of it. Otherwise, you may have one or two champions who will be dedicatedly without any kind of an expecting any benefits will work for conservation. But when you talk about a bigger group of people, the whole community to be actively working for conservation, there must be a very good economic incentive for them. If these things are taken care of, one is their rights are secured, the economic interest or the aspiration is taken care of, the conservation model is definitely going to work and community will definitely come forward to support it. And so I started discussing with the villagers where I was working there, and I found that they are very, very positive to this idea. So that's how it all started in 2004, where in one of the villages, Thembang, I had a discussion with the village heads and the senior people, and I said, "Oh, you have such a big area. Why don't you keep aside 30 some area where you'll make sure that things are taken care of in a proper manner. If the villagers are in need of firewood, they can collect it and they can burn it in their home, but they cannot take out truckload of firewood and sell it in the market. So whatever they need at a for household level consumptions, they can go and get it. But don't use it for commercial purpose until and unless you have a good plan in place to sustainably collect it." And I found they came forward without any hesitation. All the villagers came, they adopted the resolutions, and then they notified initially a 30 square kilometer area. Then as a CCA, it's a Thembang Bapu CCA. And then gradually they have, in 5 years' time, they have increased that area to 635 square kilometer area. So it was a highly motivating for me. And at this point of a time, as I am talking, there are now 9 sites where villagers are actually has demarcated the forest area under their traditional administrative jurisdiction and cleared as a CCA, the community conserved area. And total area now being managed by community is around 1,500 square kilometers. It's a huge area that the community has actually started protecting. If you look at the whole, this particular landscape where this initiative has been, you have heard about Tawang. This is a famous tourist destination. So this is all on way to Tawang. So one site is obviously Jimithang, which is very much in the corner. The west boundary of that area is with Bhutan and north boundary is with China. So there are 3 CCS which is there. And in Dirang, there are more CCS which are there. And this is an area which is known for red panda. Today only we have got a kind of information that one of the CCA local youths has captured snow leopard by using camera trap inside the CCA, which actually they are managing. These are the areas from where 7 black-necked crane was photographed by the local youths. And this is a CCA where from a red panda with 2 cubs. It is very rare to see one red panda. Not to see a red panda with 2 cubs playing in a tree. It was first videographed and photographed by the local youth of the CCA, from the CCA. What is interesting is that once this whole initiative was started, earlier also black-necked crane used to come, red panda used to be there, but they never used to notice it or never used to kind of take any interest to see the local youth particularly. But once this CCA initiative was started, they started noticing it. That, okay, whenever the red panda they will come across, they will take a photo. Whenever there is a black land, they will take a photograph. Now they have started taking pride of all this wildlife, which I think is the biggest thing that I appreciate a lot. Earlier it was nothing, it's a common thing. Now they have realized that red panda is something very rare, which is found only in their area. It is the only good wintering habitat black-necked crane they have. Now today the snow leopard. So what is happening because of the community-based tourism, which was planned and designed by the community with our help. They are managing it. So it was basically, I will say that to make sure that people are benefited, we follow 3 principles. One is that the benefit should be equitably shared among the villagers. Second is that there should be minimum profit leakage. So all the services that is there is provided by the villagers. So whatever the money is coming, it is retained by in the village itself, so that they have a bigger share of it. And also they have a centralized institutional mechanism to manage everything. So there are homestays, but homestay owner, they at their level don't decide the rates. So it's the institutions who in discussion the community decide what will be the rate. Everyone will follow that. It's a CCA management committee that has been constituted by the villagers. They are actually helping the panchayat in making rules and regulations and all those things. So you see, all the community members are there in that institution. We are as an advisor in that institution. So whenever some technical support is required, we provide them. Second is in one of the site that's just before the COVID we started, that this area is also very rich in medicinal and aromatic plants. And there are lots of spices are also there. So in one of the CCA, basically we work with the villagers to develop a sustainable collection plan for Jantazyme, which is a very, very important spice. The village institutions were kind of, and they have signed an MOU with Dabur. And in the first year, they have earned 20 lakhs out of it. The whole collection was done in a very planned manner. Earlier, it was done in a haphazard and illegal manner, but now it is done in a very planned manner with the proper management plan in place. So where we actually help them. In one go, they have earned 20 lakhs out of it. So because of the COVID, things have stopped a little bit, but we are hoping to start it again now. So there are two ways. Like one is obviously community-based tourism by which the people can be benefited, because this is where the people are seeing that the birds they are preserving, the wildlife they are preserving, the wetlands they are preserving. Tourists are coming and paying for that. So that's a direct linkage of economic development that can be achieved by conservation. Second, when you are sustainably collecting those NTFPs, the non-timber forest produce that is there inside the forest, it's a direct economic incentive they see out of it. So now, as I've said, that there are around 1,500 square kilometer area in 9 sites where people are really adopted this model of conservation and they are doing it. But yeah, we have challenges because we don't have a policy at this point of a time to support this kind of an initiative. Because government is still going by the Wildlife Protection Act, where we have wildlife sanctuaries, national parks. So we don't want to get into that now. So we want something which is completely community driven. So we are discussing. So we are getting a very positive kind of an inputs from the government, state government also. They have agreed to constitute a expert committee to frame the policy, and hopeful that this will be done. Last state wildlife board meeting, they have adopted this resolution. So once the policy is there, I think there will be more support which will come around, and it will be no more dependent on WWF after that. So because then it becomes the whole government initiative, and which is our ultimate target. That it should not be any more a WWF projects. It should become a government project where they are in the forefront supporting community in these initiatives. So this is how things are happening. So we are also trying in other areas like in 6 schedule areas in Assam, where also we have almost similar situations where lots of forests are with the community, and we are also exploring that how the similar model can be promoted there also. In other parts also, there are very good example of community initiatives. But we are also trying to kind of make sure that communities contributing a little bit more. Rather than having a say 10, 20 trees as a sacred group, if we can have 100 square kilometer area taken care by the community. Because if you have a bigger area, it makes more conservation sense because it will contribute a lot for the conservation. And community has that potential. So we are trying to mobilize community to a much more bigger conservation objective. I'm very hopeful that they can really do it. So they have already have been doing by taking care of some specific species and some specific small areas as a sacred groups or a lake as a sacred lakes, but they can actually deliver much bigger conservation objective. It actually, you can really argue that it is actually achieving the same thing what a national park is achieving. When you have a CCA, which is 150 square kilometer in area, it is good enough like any other national park of that size. The community can very proudly say that what the forest department is able to secure in the form of national park, same thing we are doing. We are doing without losing our rights, without losing our ownerships, using the resources in sustainable manner, but at the same time, the biodiversity is taken care of. Also, it makes a sense because if you have a small area, I'm now again talking from the ecology point of view, a small area will have a very high edge effect because the boundary will be very close by. So there is a high chances that the disturbance will be very, very detrimental. But if you have bigger area, the age effect will spread out. You'll have a better conservation inside than when you have a small area. And also, wildlife normally requires a bigger space, connected space. Yeah, if it is a fragmented space, then wildlife movement is getting restricted, and there are lots of genetical issues comes up because of which inbreeding and others. Gradually, the population dies down. So always is better to have a bigger area, and community is capable of managing such bigger areas, provided the required support is given to them, and they are capable of doing it. And in Northeast, we have that potential. With such a huge area under community ownership, we should think big, and we can deliver big. Initially, obviously, they were a little suspicious because whenever you talk about conservations, their whole what they have seen is that government is going to take away your land. So that suspicion was obviously there. Then why an NGO wants to come and help us? What is their interest? It helped me a lot because I spent almost 13 years with them. I stayed with them. Yeah. So 13 years is a more than a good enough time for them to really build a trust. And I was fortunate enough. I am fortunate enough. The kind of love and respect that I've received from the community. So I'm really fortunate. And I still stay cherish. Obviously, now I'm a little bit less in touch because I'm a little bit in different role now in the organization. So I'm not very much day-to-day engagement is no more there. So I have other team members who are now there spending most of the time. So I'm also now in a little bit of more different role, a bit of national level role. So I can't be very much there in the field for every time. But still, we talk about telephone. There are certain areas where this FRA that you have talked about, this community forest rights. So the some initiatives are going on. So where the community has got this community rights. So they have got the community rights. So we are trying to work with them to help them to sustainably manage it that area. So they have already got the rights. Now the whole responsibility. I think it's conservation is not something that only few people can really get the objective achieved. So it's everybody's objective. It should be everybody's objective. So which field a person may be, he may not be an ecologist. He may to any field, but it is everybody's responsibility. If everybody don't come together and appreciate what nature is providing them, I think it will be too late for us to even talk about conservation. Only handful people who are with ecology background or who are kind of passionate about wildlife cannot do much if everybody together don't come together and start contributing at an individual level at least. Otherwise, it will be too late. Too late. We have already lost a lot. COVID has taught us what a virus can do with us, which is a microscopic organism. Yeah? Then if you talk about the whole malaria, so we have given up our objective of malaria eradication to malaria management. We have not been able to eradicate malaria. So if you can't control a mosquito, what human being, super intellectual being we are talking about? So nature cannot be tamed. Nature will take care of itself. It don't care whether human being is there or not. Before human being came into existence, nature was there, and after human being get extinct, nature will be there. So it is up to us that whether we want to be a part of the nature or we want nature to kick off us out of the system.